They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy, Commander. Susan Miller stood on the landing pad with 50 other military personnel and government officials. The summer heat made her uniform stick to her back, but she kept her posture perfect. Everyone watched the sky as the massive alien ship approached Earth's first interspecies diplomatic center. "Here they come," Captain Alan Wright said beside her. His voice stayed professional, but Susan noticed his hand tighten on his clipboard. The Calgorian vessel was enormous, at least 3 times larger than the biggest human spacecraft. Its purple-black surface absorbed sunlight in a way that made it look like a hole in the sky. As it descended, wind whipped across the landing area, forcing several officials to grab their hats. Susan had studied everything available about the Calgorians since first contact 18 months ago. They were an old species that had been traveling, space for thousands of years. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with gray-green skin and 4 arms. Their technology was centuries beyond human capabilities. That technology was why everyone was here today. The peace treaty signed last month included promises of technological exchange, a gift to welcome humanity to the galactic community. Admiral Gregory Lawrence stepped forward as the ship settled onto the concrete pad. He was the highest-ranking military official present, responsible for this first major exchange. "Remember," he said quietly to Susan and Alan, "whatever they offer, show only gratitude. We can't afford to insult them." The ship's landing ramp extended with a hydraulic hiss. 3 Calgorians appeared and walked down slowly, their movements smooth in Earth's gravity. Ambassador Zexathor led them, his upper arms folded formally, while his lower arms hung relaxed, a posture Susan recognized from briefings as diplomatic. Openness. "Admiral Lawrence," the ambassador said through his translation device, "we bring greetings and gifts from the Galactic Council." The formal welcomes lasted 15 minutes. Cameras from around the world recorded the historic moment. Susan maintained her position slightly behind the admiral, observing everything. As head of the newly formed Alien Technology Integration Department, she would be directly responsible for whatever the Calgorians provided. Finally, Ambassador Zexthor gestured toward his ship. "And now, as promised, we present technology to assist humanity's development." The ship's cargo bay opened. Susan expected to see sleek devices, perhaps power systems or medical technology. What emerged instead made her blink in confusion. Robotic platforms floated out, carrying what looked like piles of junk, twisted metal, broken components, scraps of materials in strange colors. Some pieces were tiny enough to hold in one hand, others were the size of small cars. All appeared damaged, outdated, or incomplete. Beside her, Alan's breath caught. "What the hell?" he whispered. Admiral Lawrence's face showed nothing, but Susan saw his jaw tighten slightly. Ambassador Zexathor spread all 4 arms proudly. "We present components and materials from 17 different civilizations across the galaxy, technology spanning over 2,000 years of development, all freely given to demonstrate our commitment to human advancement." The robotic platforms settled onto the landing pad, depositing their loads in untidy heaps. Up close, the collection looked even worse. Scorched panels, cracked crystals, tangled wires in strange configurations. "This is their idea of technological exchange?" Alan whispered, barely moving his lips. Susan stepped forward for a closer look, her engineering mind already cataloging what she saw. Something wasn't right. These weren't just random pieces. Some showed signs of advanced manufacturing. Others had power connectors that looked surprisingly functional. "Ambassador," Admiral Lawrence said carefully, "we are grateful for your generosity. Perhaps you could explain the function of these components?" Zexthor's upper right hand made a dismissive gesture. "These are materials from various civilizations' development periods, some from decommissioned vessels, others from outdated systems. All contain principles your scientists can study and learn from." Susan knelt beside what appeared to be a cracked energy conduit. Its design was unlike anything humans had developed, but she could recognize its purpose. Next to it lay what might be part of a navigation system. its crystalline structure still intact despite the damaged housing. "We understand many pieces are beyond your current comprehension," the ambassador continued, his translator not quite hiding the condescending tone. "But over time, your scientists may reverse engineer basic principles. This is how young species learn." Susan stood, brushing dust from her uniform pants. She kept her face neutral, but inside her mind was racing. This wasn't a generous gift. It was an insult disguised as diplomacy, like giving a child broken toys as hand-me-downs. But as she looked more carefully, she began to see patterns, connections, possibilities. The Admiral was maintaining diplomatic pleasantries, thanking the Calgorians for their generous contribution to human scientific advancement. Military personnel were instructed to begin cataloging and moving the materials to secured facilities. Susan approached the Admiral during a brief pause in the ceremony. "Sir, request permission to assemble a specialized team for this project." "Admiral." Lawrence looked at her, one eyebrow slightly raised. "Your assessment, Commander?" She chose her words carefully, aware that the Calgorians might be listening. "I believe there's significant potential here they may not realize." The Admiral studied her face for a moment. He had known Susan since her academy days and trusted her technical instincts. "Do you need specific personnel?" "Dr. Howard Klein from MIT, Chief Engineer Frank Winters from the Artemis Project, Lieutenant Olivia Santos from Weapons Development, and I'll need Petty Officer Diane Martinez. She has an unusual talent for seeing patterns in chaos." The Admiral nodded slightly. "Granted, but keep it quiet. If they're testing us with this..." He left the sentence unfinished. "Understood, sir." Later, as the Calgorian delegation prepared to depart, Ambassador Zex Thor approached Susan. His large eyes studied her with what seemed like curiosity. "Your species shows remarkable restraint, Commander Miller. Others might have expressed disappointment at receiving such modest offerings." Susan smiled politely. "Humans have a saying, Ambassador. One person's trash is another person's treasure." "We're grateful for the opportunity to learn." The ambassador's translator hesitated on the idiom, then produced a sound that might have been amusement. "Indeed. We shall observe your progress with interest." As the alien ship lifted off, Susan stood with her team, watching it disappear into the clouds. "They gave us literal space junk," Alan said, no longer hiding his anger. "They're laughing. At us." Susan shook her head, her mind already sorting through possibilities, connections, adaptations that the Calgorians never considered. "No," she said quietly. "They made a mistake. They don't understand humans at all." She turned to her team, a small smile forming. "Let's show them what we can do with scraps." They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. 6 months passed since the Calgorians delivered their gift of space junk. Deep beneath the New Mexico desert, an old missile testing facility had been converted into the most classified workshop on Earth. The sign at the entrance simply read, "Project Phoenix." Susan Miller swiped her security card and walked through 5 checkpoints before reaching the main hangar. The space was enormous, originally designed to house intercontinental missiles during the Cold War. Now it contained something far more ambitious. "Commander on deck?" someone called out. The busy room didn't stop working, but many people nodded. Respectfully, as Susan passed, the center of the hangar held what was beginning to look like a spaceship. Not like any human vessel ever built before, and not like any alien ship either. It was something entirely new, a hybrid creation taking shape from the Calgorian scraps. Dr. Howard Klein waved Susan over to his workstation. His wild gray hair stood out in all directions, and dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much. "Commander, you need to see this." He pointed to a glowing crystal matrix they had recovered from what appeared to be an ancient navigation system. "We finally got it to interface with our computers. This thing can calculate faster than light jumps with precision that makes our best systems look like stone tools." Susan smiled. "Can we replicate it?" "Not yet. But we understand how to use it now." That's something the Calgorians didn't expect. Across the room, Petty Officer Diane Martinez was arguing loudly with Chief Engineer Frank Winters. Both stood over a large piece of metal that pulsed with faint blue light. "Everything okay?" Susan asked as she approached. Diane turned, her eyes bright with excitement despite the argument. "More than okay, Commander. This power core, it's from a different species than the Calgorians. We think it's Vexillian technology based on the markings." Frank nodded. "The problem is connecting it safely to the propulsion system. The Vexillians use a completely different energy signature than the drive components we salvaged." "So what's the solution?" Susan asked. Diane grinned. "We create an adapter, something that translates one energy type to another. The Calgorians would never try this because mixing technologies from different species is considered dangerous or even taboo in their culture. But we're humans," Frank added, "and we've been adapting incompatible technologies since the first person jammed a square peg into a round hole." Susan walked around their creation, now taking recognizable form. The ship, they called it the USS Defiance, was about 200 meters long. Its hull combined human steel with alien alloys in a unique pattern that their simulations showed would be incredibly strong yet flexible. Weapon systems recovered from at least 3 different alien civilizations had been modified and mounted on swivel points. Lieutenant Olivia Santos approached with a tablet displaying a weapons test. "Commander, we successfully fired the modified Centauri beam weapon. Using human targeting software improved its accuracy by 37%. The aliens never thought to combine their systems," Susan said, watching the test footage. "Each civilization kept their technology separate and pure." "Their loss, our gain," Olivia replied. "Admiral Lawrence visited that afternoon for his weekly inspection." Susan walked with him around the Defiance, explaining their progress and challenges. "The beauty is in how they don't understand human adaptability," Susan explained. "Each alien race builds technology compatible only with their own systems. They assumed the incompatibility would make this junk worthless to us." "But you found a way around that," Lawrence observed, watching as specialists integrated components that should never have worked together. "We're using Calgorian power systems to run Vexillian weapons, routing everything through modified human interfaces," Susan explained. "These parts were never meant to interact, but we're making them communicate in ways the original designers never imagined." The Admiral stopped walking and turned to Susan. His face was serious. "Time is becoming a factor, Commander. Our intelligence suggests the Calgorians are growing suspicious. They expected reports of our scientists struggling with basic principles. Instead, they've heard nothing." Susan nodded. "We've maintained strict information control. Nothing leaves this facility." "Good. But they're sending a diplomatic delegation next month. They're calling it a follow-up assessment of human technological integration capabilities." Susan understood the real meaning. "They want to see if we've done anything with their junk." "Exactly. How close are you to a test flight?" Susan considered carefully before answering. "The navigation system is operational. Weapons are at 80%. Life support is stable. The main challenge is the drive system, making sure the power core doesn't overload when we push it to full capacity." "Can you be ready in 3 weeks?" Susan hesitated. "It's possible, but risky." The Admiral's eyes moved to the ship, then back to Susan. "The risk of the Calgorians discovering what we've built might be greater. If they realize we've turned their scraps into something this advanced, they might see us as a threat rather than a primitive curiosity." Later that evening, Susan called her team leaders together. She explained the situation and the new deadline. 3 weeks? Frank looked shocked. "Commander, we need at least 2 months to complete proper testing." "We don't have 2 months," Susan replied. "We need to be space-worthy before the Calgorian delegation arrives." Lieutenant Commander Paul Evans, their security officer, spoke up. "Why not just hide the project? We could move the components temporarily." Susan shook her head. "Impossible. Besides, we need to know if this ship actually works. Theory is one thing, but the real test is in space." The team dispersed, each with new urgency in their steps. Susan stayed behind, looking up at the Defiance. What they were creating wasn't just a ship. It was proof that humanity wouldn't be dictated to or limited by the established galactic powers. For the next 3 weeks, the facility operated around the clock. Sleep was a luxury few took. Problems were solved as they appeared. Human ingenuity pushing past barriers that alien civilizations had accepted as insurmountable for centuries. On the final night before their deadline, Susan stood alone in the hangar. Tomorrow they would know if their grand experiment would fly or fail spectacularly. The Defiance gleamed under the lights, a patchwork miracle of human determination and alien technology that was never meant to work together. "We're ready, Commander," Frank said, coming to stand beside her. "All systems show green for launch." Susan nodded. "Then let's show the galaxy what humans can do with scraps." They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. The morning of the test flight arrived with tension hanging in the air. Every person in Project Phoenix felt it as they moved through final preparations. Susan stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens showing different parts of the Defiance. Each system had a dedicated team monitoring it. "Status report," she called out. Around the room, team leaders responded one by one. "Navigation systems ready," reported Officer Kevin Barnes. "Weapons systems operational," confirmed Lieutenant Olivia Santos. "Engineering standing by," Chief Frank Winters added. "Power core is stable but untested at full capacity." "Life support optimal," Dr. Howard Klein said from his station. Susan took a deep breath. "Prepare for boarding sequence. All non-essential. Personnel clear the hangar." Alarms sounded as most workers left the main hangar. Only the flight crew remained, 25 people chosen for this historic first mission. Susan walked with them toward the ship, her heart beating faster with each step. The inside of the Defiance looked nothing like traditional human spacecraft. Alien technology blended with human interfaces in ways that would confuse any conventional engineer. The bridge combined elements from at least 4 different species, all modified to work together. Susan took the captain's chair while her crew found their stations. Each seat was custom designed to accommodate the unique controls they had created. "All stations report," she ordered. One by one, her bridge crew confirmed their readiness. Susan opened a channel to the entire facility. "This is Commander Miller. Launch sequence will begin in 5 minutes. All systems on standby." In the control room, Admiral Lawrence watched with government officials who had arrived overnight. None had seen the project before today. Their faces showed shock and awe at what had been created from the alien scrap. "Impossible," one whispered. "They said it would take decades to understand alien technology." The Admiral smiled slightly. "They underestimated human determination." Inside the Defiance, Susan began the launch countdown. The massive ceiling of the hangar slowly retracted, revealing the night sky above. Stars shone down on the ship as its engines hummed to life. 3, 2, 1. "Initiate launch sequence," Susan commanded. The ship trembled. Lights flickered momentarily as the alien power core fully activated for the first time. Susan gripped her chair, hoping their calculations were correct. If the different technologies rejected each other now, the explosion would destroy the entire facility. "Power levels rising," Frank reported from engineering. 80%, 90%, stable at full power." A cheer went up from the crew. Susan allowed them this moment before refocusing. "Anti-gravity systems engaged," she ordered. The ship lifted smoothly from the hangar floor. Slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, it rose toward the open ceiling. Susan felt her stomach drop slightly. The artificial gravity systems compensated almost perfectly, but not quite. "We are airborne," she reported to the control room. Beginning ascent to orbit, the Defiance moved upward, quickly gaining speed. Through the forward windows, Susan watched as the stars grew brighter. The dark blue sky gradually turned black as they left Earth's atmosphere. "We've cleared the atmosphere," Kevin reported from navigation. All systems functioning normally. Susan couldn't help smiling now. They had done it, taken alien scraps, and built a ship that worked, but the real test was still to come. "Take us to lunar orbit," she ordered. "Standard approach pattern." The Defiance accelerated, moving faster than any human ship had traveled before. The moon grew larger in their view screen as they approached. The peaceful moment ended abruptly when alarms sounded across the bridge. "Commander," Paul Evans called from his security station. "We have incoming ships." Susan turned sharply. "Identify." Unknown configuration. 3 vessels approaching from beyond lunar orbit. Wait. Their energy signature matches Calgorian technology. Susan felt cold suddenly. They weren't supposed to arrive for another week. "They lied," Paul said simply. Susan opened a channel to Earth. "Control, this is Defiance. We have 3 Calgorian vessels approaching. Please advise." Admiral Lawrence's voice came through clearly. "Defiance, this is unexpected. The diplomatic delegation moved up their timeline without notice. Their official ships are still in orbit around Earth. These must be additional vessels." "They suspected something," Susan said quietly. "That's why they sent ships ahead of the official delegation." The Admiral's voice was tense. "Can you avoid detection?" Paul shook his head before Susan could ask. "Too late. They've altered course directly toward us. They've seen us." Susan considered their options quickly. Running would show fear. Attacking, first, would be an act of war. Remaining in place seemed best for now. "Hold position," she ordered. "Power up defensive systems, but do not target their ships. Let's see what they want." Minutes passed as the Calgorian vessels drew closer. They were smaller than the diplomatic ship that had delivered the scrap, but clearly military in design. Their angular shapes reminded Susan of predatory fish. A communication request flashed on the main screen. Susan nodded to Paul to accept it. The face of a Calgorian officer appeared. Unlike Ambassador Zexithor, this one wore what appeared to be military insignia. His 4 eyes widened visibly when he saw Susan and her human crew. "Human vessel," the translation came through. "Identify yourself and explain your presence beyond your authorized space boundary." Susan stood, keeping her voice calm and professional. "This is Commander Susan Miller of the Earth vessel Defiance. We are conducting a routine test flight within our solar system, which is sovereign human territory. We were unaware of any space boundaries." The Calgorian's upper arms moved in what Susan recognized as agitation. "Your vessel contains technologies beyond human development capability. We have been studying the technological exchange provided by the Galactic Council," Susan replied carefully. "This is the result of our research." The Calgorian spoke to someone off-screen in his native language, too quick for the translator to catch. When he turned back, his tone had hardened. "Your vessel will power down and prepare for boarding and inspection. This is not a request." Susan felt the tension on the bridge rise. This was the moment of truth. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," she responded. "As I said, we are in sovereign human territory conducting authorized tests. We would be happy to arrange a proper diplomatic meeting when we return to Earth." "You misunderstand," the Calgorian said. "Your species has violated Council protocols by creating unauthorized hybrid technology. You will comply or face consequences." The communication ended abruptly. On their sensors, Susan saw the Calgorian ships moving to surround the Defiance. "Red alert," she ordered. "All hands to battle stations." "They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy." Red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Defiance. The 3 Calgorian warships moved into attack positions around the human vessel. Susan watched them on the main screen, her mind racing through options. "They're charging weapons," Paul Evans reported from his security station. Lieutenant Olivia Santos looked up from the weapons console. "Commander, should we target their ships?" Susan shook her head. "Not yet. I don't want to start a war if we can avoid it." She opened a channel to Earth. "Control, this is Defiance. We have 3 Calgorian warships threatening to open fire. Request instructions." Admiral Lawrence's voice came through with slight static. "Defiance, this is a diplomatic crisis. The Calgorian ambassador is denying knowledge of any military vessels in our system. Try to defuse the situation, but you are authorized to defend yourselves if necessary." Susan turned to her crew. Defensive screens to maximum. Prepare evasive maneuvers but hold weapons. She reopened the channel to the Calgorian commander. Calgorian vessels, this is Commander Miller. I propose we both stand down and discuss this situation peacefully. The Calgorian commander appeared on screen again. His upper arms were held high, a posture Susan recognized as aggressive from her studies. Your primitive vessel will be confiscated for illegal technology integration, he stated flatly. Power down now or we will disable your ship and arrest your crew. Before Susan could respond, the Calgorian ships fired warning shots that passed close to the Defiance. The ship shuddered slightly as the energy weapons disturbed space around them. That was deliberate, Kevin said from navigation. They missed us by only 20 meters. Susan made her decision. Evasive pattern Delta. Show them what this ship can do. Kevin grinned as he entered commands. The Defiance responded instantly, moving with speed and agility that seemed impossible for its size. The ship twisted away from the Calgorian vessels in a tight spiral that no human or Calgorian ship could have managed. The alien vessels attempted to follow but couldn't match the Defiance's maneuverability. Susan watched as confusion spread among the Calgorian ships. They had expected to find humans in a crude prototype, not a vessel that could outperform their own. They're targeting us with tracking beams, Paul warned. Activate countermeasures, Susan ordered. Frank Winters had designed a unique system using components from what appeared to be an ancient stealth vessel. When activated, it created false sensor readings that confused the Calgorian targeting systems. The main screen, Susan could see the Calgorian ships firing at locations where the Defiance was not. She allowed herself a small smile. Open channel, she requested. When Paul nodded, she addressed the Calgorian commander again. As you can see, we would prefer to avoid conflict. I suggest we both return to Earth and address this through proper, diplomatic channels. The Calgorian's response was to order his ships to fire full weapons. Energy beams lanced through space toward the Defiance. Shields holding at 92%, Olivia reported as the ship rocked slightly from impact. Their weapons are powerful, but nothing we didn't expect. Susan nodded. Target their weapon systems only. Precision strikes, minimum power. I want to disable, not destroy. Olivia worked her console with expertise. The Defiance's weapons, a hybrid system combining technologies from 3 different alien species, fired for the first time in actual combat. Precise beams of blue-white energy struck the lead Calgorian ship exactly where its main weapons array was located. Direct hit, Olivia confirmed. Their primary weapons are offline. The Calgorian commander appeared on screen again, his eyes wide with shock. How is this possible? Your weapons should not be able to penetrate our shields. Susan didn't answer directly. I repeat my offer. Stand down and return to Earth for diplomatic talks. We have no desire to escalate this conflict. Instead of responding, the Calgorian ships changed tactics. 2 vessels moved to flank the Defiance while the damaged lead ship retreated slightly. They're trying to box us in, Kevin warned. Not today, Susan replied. Execute vertical climb, then attack pattern Omega. The Defiance shot upward relative to the Calgorian ships, then looped back down behind them in a maneuver that left the alien vessels completely out of position. Before they could adjust, Olivia fired again, disabling the weapon systems on the second ship with surgical precision. The third Calgorian ship launched what appeared to be boarding pods, small vessels designed to attach to an enemy ship and force entry. Boarding attempt, Paul warned. Not on my ship, Susan said firmly. Target those pods. The Defiance's point defense system activated. Small, precise energy pulses intercepted the boarding pods, disabling their guidance systems without destroying them. The pods drifted harmlessly away. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes, but already 2 Calgorian warships were effectively neutralized. The third maintained its position but didn't advance. Commander, Paul called out, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Lawrence. The Admiral's face appeared on screen. Defiance, the Calgorian ambassador is demanding an explanation. They claim 3 of their patrol vessels were attacked unprovoked by an unknown Earth ship. Susan kept her voice steady. Sir, we have video evidence of their actions. They fired first and attempted to board our vessel by force. We responded, with minimum necessary force to protect ourselves. I believe you, Commander. But this has become a major diplomatic incident. I need you to return to Earth immediately. Susan looked at the Calgorian ships on her screen. What about them, sir? A diplomatic vessel is being dispatched to escort them back. Your priority is to return with the Defiance intact. We need to show the Council exactly what happened here. Susan nodded. Understood, sir. Returning to Earth. As the Defiance turned back toward Earth, Susan took a moment to reflect on what had just happened. Their first encounter with alien military forces had resulted in a clear victory. The ship built from scrap had outperformed purpose-built warships from an advanced civilization. They never expected this, Frank said, joining Susan on the bridge. They gave us junk thinking we might build something crude at best. They never imagined we'd create something better than their own ships. Susan nodded. That's why they reacted with force. They're afraid of what we might become. The journey back to Earth was tense but uneventful. The remaining Calgorian ship kept its distance, simply following as the diplomatic vessel arrived to escort it. As they approached Earth, Susan could see unusual activity in orbit. More Calgorian ships had arrived, these larger and clearly diplomatic rather than military. The situation had escalated to a full diplomatic crisis. All hands prepare for landing, Susan announced, and be ready for anything. I suspect our real battle is just beginning, and it will be fought with words rather than weapons. The Defiance descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading back to the facility where it had been built. Susan knew that soon she would need to explain their actions to not just Earth authorities, but representatives of the Galactic Council itself. She was ready. The Defiance had proven what humans could do with scraps. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do with words and truth. They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. 1 week after the incident in space, Susan Miller stood in the largest conference room at the United Nations building in New York. The room had been specially modified for this historic meeting. Representatives from 24 spacefaring civilizations sat in a semicircle, their various body shapes accommodated by custom seating. Humans filled one side of the room, aliens the other. Admiral Lawrence stood beside Susan, along with the president and other high-ranking officials. On the table before them sat data drives containing complete records of the Defiance's creation and the space battle. Ambassador Zex Thor spoke first, his forearms moving in what Susan now recognized as extreme agitation. Humans have violated the most sacred principles of galactic technology development. They have created dangerous hybrid systems by combining technologies from multiple civilizations. This reckless behavior threatens the stability of the entire council. The president responded calmly. We were given materials with no restrictions on their use. We studied them and learned, as any species would. If there were rules about technology, integration, they were never shared with us. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin leaned forward. According to Susan's briefing, this was the representative of the Phalanx, one of the oldest council races. The rules were not shared because no other young species has ever attempted such integration. It is simply not done. Susan stepped forward when the president nodded to her. With respect, we didn't know that. Humans have always adapted and combined technologies. It's fundamental to how we innovate. When we received components from various civilizations, our natural approach was to find ways to make them work together. The Calgorian military commander who had confronted the Defiance in space stood suddenly. This human vessel disabled 2 of our warships. Their weapons should not have been capable of penetrating our shields. They have created a dangerous weapon that threatens galactic peace. Susan activated a holographic display showing the battle. We only fired after your ships attacked us without provocation. We used minimum force and deliberately avoided causing any deaths. The recording clearly showed the Calgorian ships firing first, and the Defiance's precise response. Ambassador Zex Thor's voice rose. The patrol ships were attempting to prevent dangerous technology from being tested. They acted to protect the galactic community. Admiral Lawrence stepped forward. From our perspective, 3 warships surrounded a test vessel in our own solar system and demanded its surrender. If roles were reversed, how would any of you have responded? The room fell, quiet for a moment. Then a small reptilian alien spoke. The human argument has merit. The initial gift was provided without clear limitations. The patrol ships did enter human territory without diplomatic clearance. The Phalanx representative nodded slowly. However, the issue of technology integration remains concerning. Mixing different civilizations' technologies has historically led to dangerous instabilities and accidents. That is why the practice is avoided. Susan saw her opening. Yet our ship showed no such instabilities. In fact, it performed better than expected. She activated another display showing the Defiance's technical specifications. We found that certain technologies actually work more efficiently when combined properly. The alien representatives murmured among themselves. Susan could tell many were shocked by the data they were seeing. Impossible, one whispered loudly enough to be heard. The efficiency ratings cannot be accurate, another added. A tall, crystalline being that Susan didn't recognize spoke in a musical voice. I propose we examine the human vessel ourselves. If their claims are true, perhaps there is something to learn here. This suggestion caused more discussion among the council members. Finally, the Phalanx representative raised a hand for silence. We will require a complete inspection of this vessel by council engineers. If the human claims prove accurate, we may need to reconsider certain assumptions about technological development. The next 3 days were intense. Alien engineers from a dozen different civilizations examined every system on the Defiance. Susan and her team answered thousands of questions, explaining their design choices and integration methods. On the 4th day, the council reconvened. The mood had shifted noticeably. The Phalanx representative spoke first. Our examination confirms the human claims. Their integration methods are unorthodox but effective. More significantly, they have achieved efficiency improvements that our separated approach to technology has never produced. The crystalline being added, the human approach is different from anything we have seen. Where we see boundaries between technologies, they see opportunities for connection. Ambassador Zexathor had been uncharacteristically quiet. Now he stood. The Calgorian collective acknowledges that the initial gift was not provided in good faith. It was meant as a test, one we expected would demonstrate human technological limitations. Susan wasn't surprised by this admission. She had suspected as much from the beginning. The ambassador continued. Instead, it revealed our own limitations of thinking. We have operated under assumptions that may no longer serve the galactic community. The president stepped forward. What does this mean? For Earth's position in the Galactic Council? The Phalanx representative stood. Humanity will be granted full council membership effective immediately. Additionally, we propose a new galactic technology integration initiative with Commander Miller as its first director. Susan felt her heart race. This was more than she had hoped for. The Phalanx continued. Earth will host this initiative. Scientists from all council races will work together to explore the potential of technological integration, with appropriate safety measures. Of course. In the months that followed, the Defiance became the template for a new class of ships, not just for war, but for exploration and scientific discovery. Susan, now Admiral Miller, supervised the construction of 5 more vessels using the same integration principles. 1 year after the confrontation in space, Susan stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital station. Below her, teams of humans and aliens worked together on projects that would have been unimaginable before. Captain Alan Wright joined her at the window. Did you ever think a pile of space junk would lead to this? Susan smiled, watching as a Calgorian engineer demonstrated something to a group of human students. They wanted to test us, they just didn't expect us to pass so dramatically. What do you think is next for us? Alan asked, looking out at the stars. That's the beauty of it, Susan replied. For the first time, nobody knows. Not us, not them. We're all discovering new possibilities together. Below them, Earth shone blue and green, home to a species that had turned scrap into innovation, suspicion into cooperation, and an insult into an opportunity that was changing the galaxy. They gave us scrap, Susan said quietly. We gave them a future none of us could have imagined alone. The stars glittered across the viewport as Commander Ilara Voss watched her small fleet drift through the nebula. The purple and blue clouds of gas gave them cover, but she knew it wouldn't last. Nothing ever lasted when you were running from the Zavaxians. Status report, she said, her voice tired after 3 days without proper sleep. Her second-in-command, a tall reptilian Nixtar named Kelvor, handed her a tablet. Not good. We lost 2 more ships during the jump. Fuel reserves at 30%. Medical bay overflowing. Ilara closed her eyes. The Battle of Proxima Centauri was supposed to be their moment of triumph. Instead, it had become yet another massacre. The resistance forces, cobbled together from a dozen different species, had fought bravely. But bravery meant little against the Zavaxian Empire's technology and numbers. How many survivors? She asked. 8,322, Kelvor replied. Less than half of what we started with. For over 2,000 years, the Zavaxians had ruled the galaxy. They came from a harsh world with little resources, which perhaps explained their ruthlessness. When they developed faster-than-light travel, they didn't seek to trade or learn from other worlds. They conquered them. One by one, species fell, under their control. The strong became soldiers, the smart became workers, the rest became slaves. Ilara's own people, the Arconians, had been among the first to fall. She had never known freedom, born in a labor camp and raised to serve. Her escape and rise to leadership in the resistance was a rare story of hope in dark times. Commander, called out the communications officer, a small furry creature named Pix. I'm picking up an unusual signal. Ilara walked over to his station. Zavaxian? No, Pix said, his whiskers twitching with excitement. It's something new, coming from an uncharted system in Sector 47. Put it on screen, the main display, filled with strange patterns. Not the orderly communications of the Zavaxians or any known species in the resistance. It's primitive, Kelvor observed. Radio waves, not quantum entanglement. Can you pinpoint the source? Ilara asked. Pix worked his controls. A small blue planet, third from its star. Readings show nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, liquid water oceans, and life signs. Billions of them. Ilara felt a flutter of hope. A populated world the Zavaxians hadn't found yet was rare. Perhaps they could find allies or at least a place to hide and rebuild their forces. Set course, she ordered. Maximum stealth. John Miller yawned as he checked the radio telescope readings one more time. Night shifts at the Montana Observatory were long and usually uneventful. At 35, with graying hair and glasses, he looked older than his years. Astronomy had been his passion since childhood, but the reality of the job involved more computer work than stargazing. He was about to get up for his 5th cup of coffee when something caught his eye. Strange readings coming from near Saturn. He adjusted the equipment, thinking it must be a glitch. The readings got stronger. This wasn't normal cosmic noise. The patterns were too regular, too structured. John grabbed his phone and called his boss, Dr. Reyes, breaking protocol for late-night calls. "This better be good, Miller," came the groggy voice. "Sir, I'm picking up anomalous signals near Saturn. I think they might be artificial." There was silence on the line then. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. By morning, the observatory was crawling with government officials. Men in dark suits asked endless questions. Equipment was brought in. John found himself explaining the same readings over and over to different people. Then a woman in an Air Force uniform entered. The room fell silent. "I'm Admiral Frank Carter," she said, her short gray hair and stern face matching her no-nonsense tone. "Mr. Miller, I need you to explain exactly what you found." John swallowed hard. The readings suggest multiple large objects moving at impossible speeds near Saturn. They appeared to be engaged in some kind of, well, if I didn't know, better I'd say it was a battle. Admiral Carter didn't look surprised. What you detected was classified national security. You'll be briefed further, but first, she was interrupted by a young officer rushing in. Admiral, we have a situation in Arizona. One of the objects is heading toward Earth. The room erupted in controlled chaos as Admiral Carter barked orders. John found himself being escorted to a helicopter, still trying to process that his discovery might be actual aliens. The Arizona desert shimmered with heat as a line of military vehicles approached the crash site. The object had come down hard, leaving a half-mile trench of scorched earth. It wasn't large, about the size of a bus, but it clearly wasn't human-made. Its smooth silver surface had no visible seams or windows. Admiral Carter stood beside Dr. Lisa Bennett, the government's top xenolinguist. Despite never having met an actual alien, Lisa had spent her career studying theoretical alien communication strategies. Any radiation? Carter asked a nearby technician. Negative, ma'am, but we're getting life signs from inside. Lisa's heart raced. After years of theorizing, she might finally have a chance to test her ideas. Movement, shouted a soldier, raising his weapon. A section of the ship's hull seemed to melt away, forming an opening. Everyone tensed. From the darkness emerged a figure. It stood upright on two legs but was clearly not human. Its skin was pale blue with faint luminescent patterns. Large almond-shaped eyes blinked against the sunlight. It wore what appeared to be a damaged uniform of some kind. The alien took 3 steps forward, then collapsed onto the desert sand. Medical teams rushed forward, overcoming their initial shock. Lisa followed closely behind. The alien was breathing, but clearly injured. Its eyes fluttered open, focusing on Lisa. Then, to everyone's shock, it spoke in broken English. Humans, listen. Danger comes. Its voice was raspy but understandable. I am Krell, diplomat of Centauri Resistance. Zivaxians. They know of Earth now. They will come. Who are the Zivaxians? Admiral Carter asked, stepping forward. Rulers. Tyrants. Have enslaved many worlds. Your signals. They detected them. Please. Must prepare. Lisa knelt beside the alien. How do you know our language? Monitored. Your broadcasts. For years. Learned. Krell winced in pain. No time. Zivaxian Advance Fleet. 3 lunar cycles. The alien grabbed Lisa's arm with surprising strength. You must fight, or you will serve. As medical teams stabilized the alien for transport, Admiral Carter pulled Lisa aside. Get everything you can from our visitor. If what it says is true, we need to inform the president immediately. She looked up at the sky, now taking on the orange hue of sunset. 3 lunar cycles. That gives us about 3 months to prepare for an alien invasion. Lisa nodded, her mind racing with questions. How would humanity react to this news? Could they possibly defend themselves against an advanced civilization that had conquered much of the galaxy? As the alien was loaded into a secure medical transport, Lisa caught its gaze one more time. In those strange eyes, she saw something unexpected. Hope. This alien, this Krell, had come to Earth not just with a warning but with a belief that humans might somehow succeed where others had failed. Lisa didn't know if such hope was justified, but as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, she made a silent promise to do everything she could to prove Krell right. 2 weeks after the crash landing, the world had changed. Governments across the globe shared information about the alien threat for the first time in human history. Old enemies put aside their differences. The United Nations meeting hall was packed as leaders formed the Earth Defense Coalition. Dr. Lisa Bennett stood before a room of military officials from 27 countries. Behind her was a screen showing images of Krell, who was recovering in a special medical facility. Krell's physiology is similar to ours in basic ways, Lisa explained. They breathe oxygen, have a circulatory system, and can digest some Earth foods. But their brain structure is quite different. Admiral Carter sat in the front row, her face serious. What about their technology? Can we replicate any of it? Our engineers are studying the ship, Lisa said. But it's like giving a steam engine to people who've just discovered fire. The materials alone are beyond our understanding. A Russian general raised his hand. This resistance that Krell speaks of, can they help us? Lisa hesitated. Krell's fleet was nearly destroyed. They're in hiding with limited resources. They're looking to us for help as much as we're looking to them. The room fell silent. Earth stood alone against an enemy that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Admiral Carter stood up. We need to accelerate our defense preparations. Dr. Bennett, continue working with Krell. Learn everything you can about Zavaxian tactics, weaknesses, anything that might help us. As the meeting ended, Lisa checked her phone. A message from the medical team. Krell was asking for her. At the secure facility, Krell sat up in a specially designed bed. His blue skin had regained some of its natural glow, and the luminescent patterns pulsed with stronger light. Dr. Bennett, he said, his English much improved. Thank you for coming. Lisa sat beside him. How are you feeling? Better. Your medical team is skilled. Krell tilted his head. But I sense fear in this place. Your people are afraid. Wouldn't your people be afraid if they faced a superior enemy? Lisa asked. Krell's patterns flickered. My people were afraid. That's why we fell so easily. The Zavaxians use fear as a weapon. They want you terrified before they arrive. Lisa thought for a moment. What makes the Zavaxians so powerful? Is it just their technology? Their technology, yes, but also their unity. They think as one. Every Zavaxian knows their place, follows orders without question. They've been conquering for thousands of years, perfecting their methods. Lisa leaned forward. But they must have weaknesses. Krell's large eyes blinked slowly. They have never faced humans before. Your kind is different. Different how? In my short time here, I've observed something unusual. You adapt quickly. You question everything. You try new approaches when old ones fail. Krell pointed to a chess set that someone had brought him. This game. When I first learned it, I followed the standard openings, the logical moves. But your people, you make unexpected choices, sometimes illogical ones that somehow work. Lisa smiled. That's just how we think. The Zavaxians don't think that way. They follow patterns. They expect others to behave predictably. Krell's voice grew stronger. This might be your advantage. At Edwards Air Force Base, Kate Wilson climbed into the cockpit of what looked like a normal fighter jet from the outside. Inside was another story. The controls were a mix of human design and alien technology salvaged from Krell's ship. Systems check complete, said the engineer through her headset. Remember, we don't fully understand how the gravitational dampeners work, so take it slow. Kate nodded, though slow wasn't in her vocabulary. At 32, she was the youngest test pilot in the program, chosen for her quick reflexes and ability to think outside the box. Beginning test flight, she said, then fired up the engines. The jet moved forward normally, then lifted off the runway. So far, nothing unusual. But as Kate reached cruising altitude, she activated the alien tech. The aircraft shot forward with impossible speed. G-forces should have crushed her, but the dampeners worked. The desert below became a blur. Holy shit, she whispered, checking her instruments. She had just broken Mach 3 without breaking a sweat. Wilson, what's your status? Came a concerned voice over the radio. Status is amazing, she replied, banking the craft in a turn that would have torn a normal jet apart. This thing handles like a dream. By the time she landed, Kate knew they had a game changer. Not enough to win a war against the Zavaxians, but enough to surprise them. And surprise, she was learning, might be humanity's best weapon. In Washington, D.C., the president addressed the nation. People gathered around televisions and phones, listening as she explained the situation in carefully measured words. There was no panic in the streets, But a quiet determination spread across the country as people began to prepare for whatever might come. Meanwhile, in orbit around Jupiter, space telescopes detected the first signs of the Xivaxian advance fleet. 7 massive ships, each the size of a small city, moving with precision toward Earth. Admiral Carter stood in the military command center, watching the feed from the telescopes. "How long?" she asked. "At current speed, they'll reach Earth in 6 days," an officer replied. Carter nodded. "Alert all EDC forces. It's time to implement Defense Protocol Alpha." The first message from the Xivaxians came 3 days later. It appeared on every screen across the planet, overriding all broadcasts. A tall, gray-skinned being with sharp features stared out from the screens. Its eyes were black pools with no visible pupils. "People of Earth, I am Grand Admiral Dorak of the Xivaxian Empire. Your world has been added to our domain. Surrender now, and you will be assigned appropriate roles within our society. Resist, and you will be subdued by force." The message repeated in multiple languages, then disappeared. Within an hour, the UN Security Council convened an emergency session. The debate was brief. "We will not surrender," the Secretary General announced. "We choose to fight." Lisa sat with Krell as they reviewed the Xivaxian message. "Dorak," Krell said, his patterns pulsing rapidly. "He is one of their most ruthless commanders. He led the assault on my homeworld." "What will they do next?" Lisa asked. "They will send representatives to your leaders, offering terms. It is part of their process. They believe in giving their victims a chance to surrender with dignity." Admiral Carter joined them, looking grim. "We've just received word. A smaller Xivaxian vessel is approaching Earth, requesting landing coordinates for a diplomatic meeting." Krell's patterns dimmed. "Be careful. Their idea of diplomacy is not like yours." "We'll be ready," Carter said. "Dr. Bennett, I want you there as our xenolinguistics expert." Lisa nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "What about Krell?" "Too risky to reveal we have an ally from the Resistance. The Xivaxians think they're wiped out. Let's keep that advantage." As preparations began for the first face-to-face meeting with the Xivaxian Empire, Lisa couldn't help but wonder if humanity's creativity and adaptability would be enough against an enemy that had conquered countless worlds. But looking at Krell, she saw something she hadn't noticed before, a spark of hope in his alien eyes. Perhaps humans really were different. Perhaps they could do what no other species had managed: stand up to the tyrants of the stars. The diplomatic meeting with the Xivaxians ended in disaster. Their representatives, tall gray beings with emotionless black eyes, had not come to negotiate, but to explain how Earth's surrender would proceed. When Earth's leaders refused, the Xivaxians simply returned to their ship without another word. 6 hours later, the attacks began. Major cities around the world reported strange objects in the sky. Then came the precise strikes. Government buildings, military bases, power plants, all hit with weapons that seemed to bypass Earth's most advanced defenses. Admiral Carter stood in the underground command center, watching reports come in from around the globe. The room buzzed with controlled panic as officers tried to coordinate a response. "Casualties?" she asked. "Minimal, surprisingly," replied her aide. "They're hitting infrastructure, not population centers." Carter nodded. "They don't want to damage their future workforce." A large screen showed the status of Earth's counterattacks. Fighter jets launched missiles at Xivaxian ships, only to watch them disappear harmlessly against advanced shields. Ground-based weapons fared no better. "We need something they're not expecting," Carter muttered. As if on cue, the doors opened and Steve Martinez walked in, escorted by 2 guards. He was a stocky man with oil-stained hands and a determined look on his face. "Admiral," he said, "I think I found something." Steve had been a mechanic in Detroit before the invasion. When a small Xivaxian scout ship crashed near his garage, he did what came naturally. He took it apart to see how it worked. "They're shields," he explained, laying out pieces of metal on the table. "They block energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles. But I noticed something weird when I was cutting into the wreckage." He showed them a piece of the ship's hull that had unusual scoring marks. This happened when my cutting torch was close to some copper wiring I had lying around. Something about the combination affected their metal. Carter studied the marks. You're saying certain earth metals disrupt their technology? Not just any metals. Specific combinations with specific electrical currents running through them. Steve pulled out diagrams he had drawn. I've been testing different mixtures. This one works best. Carter looked at the simple solution this mechanic had found when all their military scientists had failed. How quickly can you make weapons based on this? Steve grinned. Already started. Got 20 of my buddies from the auto plant working on it. For the first time since the invasion began, Carter felt a spark of hope. Dr. Lisa Bennett worked frantically at her computer, with Krell looking over her shoulder. They had moved to a bunker after the first attacks destroyed her lab. If I understand their communication protocols correctly, she said, this code might disrupt their ship-to-ship signals. Krell's skin patterns pulsed with excitement. Yes, the Zavaxians rely heavily on constant communication. Their hierarchy requires it. Lisa had noticed that the Zavaxian ships followed remarkably consistent patterns in battle. They never improvised, never adapted. Everything was by the book. It's like they're running on automated systems, she had told Paul Harris, a software engineer who joined her team. Paul nodded. Which means they might be vulnerable to the same things that affect our computers. Together they had developed what they called a communication virus, a signal that could infiltrate Zavaxian networks and cause temporary system failures. Are you sure this will work? Lisa asked Krell. The aliens' patterns dimmed slightly. Not certain. But the Zavaxians have used the same communication protocols for centuries. They value consistency over security. Paul returned with news. Admiral, Carter has authorized a test run. We'll target one of the smaller ships over the Pacific. They worked through the night, refining their code. At dawn, they were ready. The signal was sent from a satellite that had somehow survived the initial attacks. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then they received word. The target ship had suddenly lost power and drifted out of formation before its systems came back online. It worked, Lisa exclaimed. Not for long, but it worked. Paul was already typing. If we modify the code like this, we might extend the effect. Admiral Carter called with new orders. We're moving to Phase 2. Your virus gave us an idea. Kate Wilson led a team of pilots trained on the hybrid fighter jets. Their mission was simple but dangerous. When a Zavaxian ship was hit with the communication virus, they would fly in during the brief window of vulnerability and attempt to board it. This is crazy, said Sam Boyd, her wingman, as they waited for the signal. Crazy is all we've got right now, Kate replied. The alert came. A Zavaxian destroyer over the Indian Ocean had been hit with the virus. Its systems would be down for approximately 4 minutes. That's our window, Kate said. Let's move. Their 6 fighters launched, reaching the disabled ship in record time. As they approached, Kate marveled at its size, easily 10 times larger than an aircraft carrier. Remember the plan, she told her team. We're not trying to destroy it, we want to capture it. They landed in what appeared to be a docking bay, the doors frozen open due to the system failure. The team, dressed in suits designed with Krell's help to protect against Zavaxian atmosphere, moved quickly through the ship. They encountered little resistance. Most of the crew was busy trying to restore systems. The few Zavaxians they did meet seemed shocked by the human ability to improvise tactics on the spot. Kate led her team to what Krell had described as the control center. They secured it just as the ship's power began to flicker back on. Harris, now, Kate shouted into her comm. From Earth, Paul uploaded a modified version of the virus directly into the ship's core systems. This one was designed not to disable but to override. Slowly, the destroyer's engines came under their control. Kate felt a surge of triumph as the massive ship responded to their commands. Admiral Carter, this is Wilson. Package secured. 1 Zavaxian destroyer ready for delivery. The radio crackled with Carter's reply. Excellent work, Wilson. Bring it home. As they navigated the captured ship toward Earth, Kate noticed something on the long-range scanners. Multiple signatures approaching from the direction of Saturn. We've got company, she reported. And they're not Zavaxian. The readings matched what Krell had described as resistance ships. Commander Alara Voss had arrived with what remained of her fleet. The war for Earth was about to enter a new phase. Humans had proven they could fight back against the galactic tyrants. Now they would show they could win. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge of her ship, studying the blue planet below. Earth was beautiful, reminding her of stories about her own homeworld before the Zavaxians stripped it bare. But what amazed her more was the battle taking place. Humans were fighting back and not just surviving, but actually capturing Zavaxian vessels. "Impossible," whispered Kelvor, her second-in-command. "No species has ever stolen a Zavaxian ship before." "Hail them," Alara ordered. "Let's meet these humans." The meeting took place on the captured destroyer, now renamed Liberty by its human crew. Admiral Carter led the Earth delegation, while Commander Voss represented the resistance. "We thought you were all dead," Carter said after introductions. "Krell told us your fleet was destroyed." "Nearly," Alara replied. "We lost many ships at Proxima Centauri. The survivors scattered. We've been gathering what remains of the resistance." Krell, who had insisted on coming despite his still healing injuries, greeted Alara with a formal gesture. "Commander, the humans have discovered things about Zavaxian technology that even we didn't know." Alara looked skeptical. "Such as?" Steve Martinez, who had been invited to the meeting, stepped forward. "We found a way to disrupt their shields, and Dr. Bennett figured out how to mess with their communication systems." "How?" Alara asked. "We've been fighting them for generations." "Maybe that's the problem," Carter suggested. "You've been fighting them their way. We're fighting them our way." Alara considered this. "Show me." Over the next week, humans and aliens worked together. Alara shared everything the Resistance knew about Zavaxian weaknesses, while Earth scientists explained their discoveries. John Miller, the astronomer who had first detected the alien signals, made perhaps the most important breakthrough. He had been studying the electromagnetic emissions from Zavaxian ships. "Look at this," he told Lisa Bennett and Paul Harris, pointing to a pattern on his screen. "Their technology operates on very specific frequencies, almost like..." "Like what?" Lisa asked. "Like they're allergic to certain wavelengths," John replied. "When their ships are hit with this particular frequency, their power systems flicker. It's brief, but it happens every time." Paul looked excited. "If we could generate that frequency at a large enough scale, we could disable their entire fleet," Lisa finished. "They called it the Aurora Cannon, an enormous device designed to emit powerful electromagnetic pulses at the exact frequency that disrupted Zavaxian technology. Building it would require resources from both humans and the Resistance." Meanwhile, Carter and Voss planned their strategy. The Zavaxians had called in reinforcements, clearly stunned by humanity's unexpected resistance. Grand Admiral Dorak doesn't like being embarrassed, Voss explained. "He'll come with everything he has." "Good," Carter replied. "Let him bring it all to one place. Makes our job easier." Steve Martinez continued improving his anti-shield weapons, now working with alien engineers who provided materials that made them even more effective. Together they created what Steve called shield breakers, small devices that could be attached to conventional missiles, allowing them to penetrate Zavaxian defenses. Kate Wilson trained more pilots to fly the hybrid fighters, incorporating tactics from both human combat doctrines and resistance experience. Her squadrons practiced maneuvers that no Zavaxian would expect. "They think in straight lines," she told her pilots. "We need to think in curves and spirals." Lisa Bennett made another discovery while working with Krell. She had been studying ancient records from various alien species that the Resistance had preserved. "Look at this," she said, showing Krell text from a civilization that had been conquered thousands of years ago. "They mention humans." Krell studied the text. "Yes, the ancients visited Earth long ago. They found humans primitive but noted something unusual about your genetic structure." "What was it?" Lisa asked. "The text suggests that humans have a unique neural pattern that allows for more creative thinking." Krell pointed to another passage. "It's why we were drawn to your world when we detected your signals. There were old stories about Earth about humans being different, Lisa read further. It says humans might be able to use certain technologies in ways their creators never imagined. This led to experiments with captured Zavaxian equipment. To everyone's surprise, human operators could indeed make the alien technology perform in unexpected ways. Where Zavaxians used their weapon systems in programmed, predictable patterns, humans found ways to modify them, combine functions, and create new capabilities. It's like they built these amazing tools but only used them for one thing, Steve remarked after reconfiguring a Zavaxian energy cannon to emit a continuous beam rather than pulses. The combined Earth resistance forces continued to win small victories, but everyone knew the real test was coming. Long-range scans detected a massive Zavaxian fleet approaching, led by Dorak's flagship, the inevitable Dominion. They're bringing their planet killer, Voss said grimly during a strategy meeting. Planet killer? Carter asked. A weapon capable of rendering a world uninhabitable. They've used it before when a species proved too troublesome. Voss's voice was heavy with memory. My homeworld was one of them. The Aurora cannon isn't ready yet, John Miller reported. We need more time. How? Much time? Carter asked. 3 days, maybe 4. Voss shook her head. The fleet will be here in 2. Steve Martinez, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. What if we slowed them down? Give us more time? How? Voss asked. We've captured 5 of their ships now. What if we use them to hit the approaching fleet? Not to win, just to delay. Carter nodded. A holding action, volunteers only. Kate Wilson was the first to raise her hand. I'll lead it. The mission was dangerous but simple. Take the captured Zavaxian vessels, hit the approaching fleet with everything they had, then retreat before they could be destroyed. Just enough to force Dorak to stop and reassess. As Kate prepared her team, she received an unexpected visitor. Commander Voss. You know this is suicide, Voss said bluntly. Kate checked her equipment. No, it's a calculated risk. We'll hit them hard, then jump out before they can respond. Dorak is not like other Zavaxians. He adapts. That's why he's their best commander. Then we'll have to adapt faster, Kate replied. That's what we do. Voss studied the human pilot. Your species is strange. You know you're outmatched, yet you still believe you can win. Kate smiled. That's not strange. That's human. The small fleet of captured ships departed Earth orbit, heading toward the approaching Zavaxian armada. Behind them, the Aurora cannon was being built at a frantic pace. The planet's fate would depend on which arrived first, the cannon's completion or Dorak's revenge. Kate Wilson's delaying mission worked better than anyone expected. Her small fleet of captured ships struck the Zavaxian armada from unexpected angles, using tactics no Zavaxian commander would consider. They targeted communication arrays rather than weapons, creating confusion in the highly coordinated enemy fleet. When Dorak ordered his ships to form a defensive pattern, Kate's team was already gone, jumping to another position to strike again. The Zavaxian advance slowed to a crawl as they constantly had to regroup and repair. They're buying us time, John Miller said as he worked on the final calibrations for the Aurora cannon. The massive device now stood on a platform in Earth orbit, assembled from parts scavenged from both human and alien technology. Admiral Carter watched from the command center as reports came in. How much longer? 6 hours, John replied. Maybe 5 if everything goes perfectly. Carter nodded. Wilson's team has given us that, let's not waste it. On Earth below, people watched the skies with a mixture of fear and hope. The initial panic had faded, replaced by a grim determination. Humans had always been good at facing impossible odds. On the bridge of the inevitable Dominion, Grand Admiral Dorak's patience was wearing thin. His black eyes narrowed as another report of damaged communications came in. This is unacceptable, he said, his voice cold. No primitive species has ever caused us such inconvenience. Beside him stood a figure even taller than Dorak, wearing robes of shimmering material that seemed to bend light around it. The Zavaxian emperor rarely left the homeworld, but the unusual resistance on Earth had drawn his attention. "Perhaps we have underestimated these humans," the emperor said. "A momentary setback, Your Eminence," Dorak assured him. "I have studied their patterns now. Their attacks seem random, but there is a logic to them. We will adapt." The emperor touched a control panel, bringing up images of Earth. "This world has resources we need. But more importantly, we cannot allow successful resistance. It gives others hope." "Understood," Dorak said. "I recommend we deploy the planet killer. End this quickly." The emperor considered for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed." Kate's team was running out of tricks. 2 of their 5 ships had been badly damaged, and the Zavaxians were starting to anticipate their moves. "They're learning," she told her crew. "Time for our final run." Her plan was simple but dangerous: a direct attack on Dorak's flagship. Not to destroy it, but to distract it from what was happening near Earth. As they approached the massive ship, Kate saw something that made her blood run cold. A large section of the flagship was opening, revealing what could only be the planet killer weapon Voss had warned about. "Change of plans," she radioed to her team. "We need to disable that weapon at all costs." On Earth, the Aurora cannon was finally ready. John Miller checked the settings one last time. "It's now or never," he told Admiral Carter. "But we need a clear shot at their flagship." Carter looked at the tactical display where Kate's team was engaged in a desperate battle near the inevitable Dominion. "Wilson, report," she called. Kate's voice came through, broken by static. "They're powering up something big, Admiral. Some kind of main weapon. We're trying to damage it, but their defenses are too strong." "Hold them off as long as you can," Carter ordered. "The Aurora cannon is ready." Commander Voss joined them, studying the display. "The planet killer takes time to charge. If you can hit them before it's fully powered." "Understood," Carter said. Then to John, "Target their flagship and fire when ready." Kate saw the message come through. The Aurora cannon was ready to fire. Her team just needed to survive long enough for it to work. "All ships defensive positions," she ordered. "We need to stay alive for 5 more minutes," her pilots responded, forming a loose shield between the planet killer and Earth. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one advantage: unpredictability. One by one, Kate's ships were hit. Systems failed, hulls breached, but they refused to retreat. On her command screen, Kate watched the countdown from Earth. 3 minutes until the Aurora cannon fired. A direct hit rocked her ship, knocking out engines. They were dead in space, drifting toward the Zavaxian flagship. "Perfect," Kate muttered, and fired the last of their weapons, not at the enemy ships, but at the space around them. The explosions created a cloud of debris, temporarily blocking the planet killer's line of sight to Earth. It wouldn't stop the weapon, but it might confuse its targeting systems for a crucial moment. "Now," Carter ordered. John Miller activated the Aurora cannon. The massive device hummed to life, channeling enormous energy into a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse. A beam of shimmering blue light shot from the cannon toward the Zavaxian fleet. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It carried no explosive power, no physical projectile. Instead, it bathed the enemy ships in the exact frequency that disrupted their technology. On the inevitable Dominion, alarms blared as systems began to fail. The charging planet killer stuttered, its energy containment fields fluctuating dangerously. "What is happening?" the Emperor demanded. Dorak had no answer. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this kind of attack. With the Zavaxian fleet temporarily disabled, Dr. Lisa Bennett enacted the final part of the plan. Using the communication systems from Krell's ship, amplified by Earth's satellite network, she broadcast a message to every Zavaxian vessel, and beyond, to all corners of the galaxy. "Attention all species under Zavaxian control. This is Earth. We have found a way to defeat our oppressors. The Zavaxian technology has weaknesses. Their perfect order can be broken. Join us. Rise up. Together we can end their tyranny." She sent technical details along with the message: how to disrupt Xivaxian shields, how to interfere with their communications, all the discoveries humans had made in their short time fighting the Empire. Across, say, the galaxy, the message reached ships and planets where enslaved species had lived under Xivaxian rule for generations. On hundreds of worlds, people heard that resistance was possible, that Earth had found a way, and they rose up. Admiral Carter ordered all Earth forces to attack the disabled Xivaxian fleet. With their shields down and systems failing, the once invincible ships were vulnerable. The inevitable Dominion took the worst damage. The half-charged planet-killer weapon became unstable, energy building with nowhere to go. "We must abandon ship," Dorak told the Emperor, breaking every protocol of Xivaxian command. But it was too late. The flagship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking the Emperor, Dorak, and the heart of the Xivaxian command structure with it. Without their leaders, without their perfect coordination, the remaining ships fell into disarray. Some fought on, but others began to retreat. Kate Wilson, having escaped her crippled ship in a survival pod, watched through a small viewport as the Xivaxian fleet, the terror of the galaxy for thousands of years, began to break apart. 6 months. Later, representatives from dozens of formerly enslaved species gathered on Earth. The Galactic Cooperative was formed, with Earth taking a prominent but equal role alongside other free worlds. Commander Voss, now leading the rebuilding efforts, on her homeworld raised a glass in toast. "To the humans who taught us all that tyranny is not inevitable," Admiral Carter smiled. "To working together as equals. No more galactic tyrants." As the celebration continued, Lisa Bennett found Krell looking out a window at the stars. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That the galaxy is lucky humans decided to step in," he replied. "Your species sees possibilities where others see only limitations." Lisa looked up at the night sky, now filled with friendly ships from across the galaxy. "That's just who we are. We never accept that something is impossible until we've tried it ourselves." Krell's skin patterns glowed brightly. "A very human quality, and one the galaxy desperately needed."